The hospital corridor felt endless as another sharp pain tore through Maya Daniels' body. Her husband stood just 15 feet away, but he wasn't rushing to help her. Instead, he was holding another woman's hand. "I'm not paying for this," Michael Daniels said loudly, his voice echoing through the hallway of St. Catherine's Medical Center in Lagos. "Maya has her own bank account. She can figure out how to cover the hospital bill herself." The word struck Maya like a slap across the face. She pressed her palm against the cold wall, trying to steady herself as another contraction gripped her body. Her water had broken 20 minutes ago in the parking lot, and her baby was coming whether her husband cared or not. Michael stood there with Joy Williams, the obstetrics nurse who had been feeding him lies for months. Their fingers were intertwined while Maya clutched her swollen belly alone, abandoned in the place where she was supposed to feel safest. What Michael didn't know was that the trembling woman he had just dismissed owned secrets that would destroy him. In the 72 hours since he announced his affair, Maya had already made moves that would change everything. She had bought this hospital with a single phone call that morning. But what happens when a man who abandoned his pregnant wife discovers she's actually a secret billionaire who now owns his entire world? Maya had met Michael Daniel 5 years ago at a small gathering in Victoria Island. He was charming, handsome, and seemed genuinely interested in her as a person. She was working as a secondary school teacher in Surulere at the time, living modestly in a simple apartment. What Michael never knew was that Maya was born Maya Adeyemi. Her grandfather, David Adeyemi, had built Adeyemi Technologies into a software empire that revolutionized medical systems across 47 countries. When he died 18 months ago, he left her everything, a trust fund worth 37 billion naira. But Maya had chosen silence over revelation. She wanted to test whether the man she married would love her through what he believed was financial struggle. She drove a 10-year-old Honda, clipped coupons at the market, and never once hinted at the fortune that sat waiting in her accounts. The test had been simple. Would Michael stay faithful when he thought she had nothing? Would his love survive what he believed was poverty? Now, as she stood in the hospital corridor watching him walk away with another woman, she had her answer. Michael had failed the test spectacularly. "Maya, please," a nurse named Grace said softly, approaching her with a wheelchair. "Let me help you to the delivery room. You shouldn't be standing right now." Maya nodded, grateful for the kindness. As Grace helped her into the wheelchair, Maya watched Michael and Joy disappear through the automatic doors into the Lagos night. His hand never left Jessica's waist, as if he needed constant confirmation that she was real and Maya was just a problem he had finally escaped. Grace wheeled Maya down the corridor toward the delivery room. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Other expectant mothers sat in wheelchairs with their husbands hovering protectively beside them. The contrast was painful. "Your husband," Grace began carefully as they entered the delivery room. "Sometimes men get scared when things become real. Sometimes they come back." Maya met the nurse's eyes with a look that held no illusions and no desperate hope. "He won't come back," she said simply, her hand resting on her belly where her daughter was preparing to enter the world. "And I don't want him to." The statement hung in the air between them. Grace recognized it as a declaration of independence, the kind she had seen from many women who transformed in delivery rooms. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from her attorney, Margaret Okonkwo. The text was brief but powerful. "Adeyemi Holdings now owns St. Catherine's Medical Center. All documentation filed. Official announcement scheduled for 9 a.m. Congratulations on your acquisition and your impending motherhood." A cold smile touched Maya's lips despite another contraction rolling through her body. St. Catherine's Medical Center employed 847 people across 4 buildings in Lagos. It generated 340 million naira in annual revenue. And among its staff was one Joy Williams, obstetrics nurse, whose employment file now sat on a server that Maya's company controlled completely. What will Maya do with the power she now holds over the people who betrayed her? The delivery room monitors beeped steadily as Grace attached them to Maya's belly. They tracked the baby's heartbeat and the contractions that were now coming every 4 minutes. Each one was a wave of pain that Maya breathed through with impressive focus. "Would you like an epidural?" Grace asked gently, adjusting the 4-line that would deliver fluids. "It can help manage the pain." Maya nodded, too exhausted to speak. The physical pain was manageable compared to the emotional devastation of being abandoned by the man she had trusted with her heart. As Grace prepared the epidural, Maya's mind drifted back to her wedding day 5 years ago. It had been a small courthouse ceremony in Ikeja. Michael had been 23, eager and seemingly in love. She had been 25, hopeful that she had found a genuine partner. Her grandfather had insisted she sign a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. "Anyone who truly loves you will sign without hesitation," he had told her. "Because they won't be marrying you for money they don't even know exists." Michael had signed the papers without reading them carefully. He had been too focused on the small reception afterward, too eager to start their life together. He thought the prenup was just standard courthouse paperwork protecting her teacher's salary and modest savings. He had no idea he was signing away any claim to billions. The epidural began to work, dulling the worst of the contractions. Maya felt her body relax slightly, though her mind remained sharp and focused. She thought about the next steps, about the chess game she was now playing with pieces Michael didn't even know existed. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a detailed message from Margaret outlining the hospital acquisition and Jessica's employment status. Maya read it carefully, making mental notes. "Is there anyone you'd like me to call?" Grace asked, her voice full of sympathy. "Family? Friends? Someone to be with you during delivery?" "My attorney is coming," Maya said quietly. "She's the only family I need right now." Grace nodded, understanding that sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're born into. She had seen enough broken families in this delivery room to know that blood didn't always mean loyalty. The contractions continued, growing stronger and closer together. Maya focused on her breathing, on the life she was about to bring into the world. Her daughter would be born into truth, not lies. Into strength, not weakness. Suddenly, the delivery room door burst open with enough force to startle Grace. A well-dressed woman in her late 50s swept into the room like a storm. Her designer coat was still buttoned against the Legos humidity, and her face was twisted in disgust. Daniel, Michael's mother, had arrived. "So this is where my failure of a son has been hiding," Eleanor announced, her voice dripping with contempt. Her eyes scanned the room, noting Michael's absence with visible satisfaction. "Though I see he's finally developed some sense and left you to deal with this situation alone." Grace stepped forward, her professional composure cracking. "Ma'am, this is a delivery room. Your daughter-in-law is in active labor and—" "She's not my daughter-in-law," Eleanor interrupted sharply, moving closer to Maya's bed with predatory grace. "She's the mistake my son made when he was too young to know better. A teacher." The word dripped with contempt. Maya felt another contraction building, but she kept her eyes locked on Eleanor's face. She saw in her mother-in-law the same cruelty that had shaped Michael from childhood, the same entitlement that had taught him people were disposable. Eleanor had never approved of their marriage. She had skipped the courthouse ceremony entirely, sending a check for 2,000 naira that bounced 3 days later. It had been a deliberate insult that Michael had laughed about. "Where is Michael?" Eleanor demanded, looking around as if her son might be hiding. "Surely even he hasn't been stupid enough to actually abandon you during childbirth." "He left," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the pain. "He left with Joy Williams, the nurse he's been sleeping with for 6 months. They walked out together about 40 minutes ago." Eleanor's laugh was sharp and cruel, sucking warmth from the room. "Well, at least he's finally showing some backbone. Joy Williams, good. At least Michael has upgraded to someone who works in healthcare instead of wasting time with a nobody teacher." Grace gasped audibly, reaching for the call button to summon security. But Maya caught her wrist gently, shaking her head. "Don't," Maya said, her eyes never leaving Eleanor's face. "Let her talk. Let her say everything. I want to remember this moment exactly as it is." What will Eleanor say next, and how will her words seal her own fate? Eleanor stepped closer to the hospital bed, her smile widening as she mistook Maya's composure for weakness. She had always demanded passive acceptance from anyone she considered beneath her social standing, and she expected nothing different now. "You want to remember this?" Eleanor laughed again, the sound filling the delivery room with poison. "The moment you realize you've lost everything? You're about to become a single mother with a teacher's salary, raising a child whose father didn't even care enough to stay for the birth." Maya felt the monitors spike as another contraction peaked, but she breathed through it with visible control. Grace stood nearby, her hand hovering near the call button, ready to summon security at any moment. "You have nothing, Maya," Eleanor continued, adjusting the expensive scarf at her throat. The gesture revealed a 40,000 naira watch on her wrist. "You are nothing. And now my son is free to build the life he actually deserves with someone who—" "Your son," Maya interrupted, her voice cutting through Eleanor's monologue with surgical precision, "just made the worst mistake of his life. And you, Eleanor, just made yours." The monitors beeped faster as Maya's contraction intensified, but her eyes remained locked on her mother-in-law's face. She watched as confusion briefly crossed Eleanor's features, a momentary uncertainty that suggested some survival instinct recognized danger. "What are you talking about?" Eleanor demanded, but her voice had lost some of its confident cruelty. Something in Maya's tone had shifted, and Eleanor's instincts were finally catching up to reality. Maya smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed her face despite the pain. She reached for her phone, not to call for help, but to send a message to Margaret. It was time to reveal the truth. "Grace," Maya said calmly, "would you please stay? I want you to witness what happens next." Grace nodded, moving to stand beside the bed protectively. She had worked in this hospital for 15 years, and she had seen many family dramas play out in delivery rooms. But something told her this one would be different. Maya's phone buzzed with Margaret's response confirming she was on her way. The attorney had been waiting at a nearby cafe, ready to arrive the moment Maya gave the signal. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably, her confidence wavering. "I don't know what game you think you're playing, but Michael has moved on. He's with Joy now, and there's nothing you can do about it." "Joy Williams," Maya said thoughtfully as if tasting the name. "The obstetrics nurse who works here at St. Catherine's Medical Center." "Tell me, Eleanor, do you know who owns this hospital?" Eleanor blinked, confused by the sudden change of topic. "What does that have to do with anything? Some medical corporation owns it. Why would I care?" "You should care," Maya replied, her voice soft but sharp. "Because as of 6 o'clock this morning, St. Catherine's Medical Center is wholly owned by Adeyemi Holdings. And I am Adeyemi Holdings." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eleanor stared at Maya as if she had started speaking a foreign language. Grace's eyes widened in surprise, pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking into place. "That's impossible," Eleanor whispered, her hand gripping the door frame. "You're a teacher. You drive a Honda. You use market coupons. You're nobody." "I was testing your son," Maya said, another contraction rolling through her as she spoke. "Testing whether he would remain faithful when he believed I had nothing. He failed that test spectacularly. And so did you, Eleanor, when you mocked me for being worthless while I was in labor with your granddaughter." Eleanor's face drained of color. Her designer clothes suddenly seemed like costumes, her cruelty exposed as the desperate posturing of someone who had just made a catastrophic error in judgment. The delivery room door opened, and Margaret Okonkwo entered with her briefcase. She was 63 years old, sharply dressed, and had never lost a case in family court. She had been Maya's grandfather's personal attorney before his death. "Good evening," Margaret said smoothly, nodding at Grace before turning her attention to Eleanor. "Mrs. Daniel, I'm Margaret Okonkwo, senior attorney for Adeyemi Holdings. I believe we need to have a conversation about your son's marriage and your own financial situation." Eleanor looked between Maya and Margaret, her expression shifting from disbelief to comprehension to horror. The reality was crashing down on her like a building collapsing. "Maya," Eleanor began, her voice cracking in a way Maya had never heard before. "I didn't know. If I had known who you really were, I never would have said those things." "Exactly," Maya finished quietly. "You wouldn't have laughed at someone rich. But you had no problem laughing at someone you thought was poor. That's the problem, Eleanor. Not that you said those things to someone with money, but that you said them at all." How will Eleanor react when she learns the full extent of what her cruelty has cost her? Margaret opened her briefcase with efficient movements, pulling out documents that would detonate like bombs through the Daniel family's carefully constructed world. She stood beside Maya's bed, her expression professionally neutral but her eyes sharp with purpose. "The hospital acquisition is complete," Margaret said quietly, glancing at Maya while Grace monitored the baby's heartbeat. "Adeyemi Holdings now owns this entire medical complex in Lagos. I've prepared termination paperwork for Joy Williams, effective immediately. The cause is listed as conduct unbecoming after the night supervisor reported her unprofessional behavior during your admission." Maya nodded, her hands resting protectively on her belly. The contractions were stronger now, coming every 3 minutes. Her daughter would be born soon, entering a world that had already revealed its capacity for both betrayal and justice. "Joy will receive no severance package," Margaret continued, making notes on her tablet. "Her nursing license review has been flagged for the ethics board to examine her relationship with a patient's husband. That's a serious violation of professional conduct." Eleanor swayed slightly, reaching out to steady herself against the wall. The full picture was becoming clear, and the implications were staggering. Her son had abandoned a billionaire for a nurse who was about to lose everything. What about Michael? Maya asked, her voice carrying no anger now, only cold calculation. She was executing a business strategy, and emotion had no place in business. Margaret pulled more documents from her briefcase. Your mother-in-law's estate requires discussion as well, she said, turning to face Eleanor directly. Daniel owns a property in Ikoyi that is heavily mortgaged. She owes 2.3 million naira against a property currently valued at 1.8 million in today's market. Eleanor's face went from pale to ashen. How do you know about my mortgage? She whispered. Because the bank holding that mortgage is Adeyemi Financial Services, Margaret replied smoothly. A subsidiary Maya's grandfather established in 1987. I've prepared foreclosure proceedings to begin immediately unless full payment is rendered within 30 days. The cruelty of it struck Maya with sudden force. She was becoming exactly what she had accused Michael of being, wielding power as a weapon, using money to destroy lives. For a moment, doubt flickered in her chest. Then she remembered standing alone in that corridor, abandoned while carrying her child. She remembered Eleanor's cruel laughter, the mockery, the deliberate attempts to break her spirit when she was most vulnerable. The doubt passed like a shadow. Execute it, Maya said, meeting Margaret's eyes with an understanding that passed between two women who had both learned hard lessons about mercy and cruelty. And I want Joy Williams's termination to be handled professionally but publicly. The staff should understand that this hospital has new ownership and new standards. Margaret made notes on her tablet, her stylus moving with practiced efficiency. Michael has been calling the hospital every hour since 6 this morning, she added. The new receptionist has been instructed to inform him that his wife delivered successfully but is not accepting visitors. He's become increasingly agitated. He wasn't worried about his daughter being born, Maya said, adjusting her position as another strong contraction hit. He's worried about his mistress losing her job. That tells you everything you need to know about what he values. Eleanor suddenly moved forward, her designer shoes clicking on the floor. She reached toward Maya with trembling hands, her face desperate. Maya, please. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But you can't do this. That house is all I have. Michael gives me money from his salary, but it's not enough to. You taught your son that people are disposable, Maya interrupted, her voice steady despite the pain racking her body. You taught him that cruelty is acceptable when directed at those you consider beneath you. You mocked me while I was bringing your granddaughter into the world. These are consequences, Eleanor. Not cruelty. Just consequences. Grace stepped forward to check Maya's vital signs, her face showing a mixture of professional concern and personal admiration. Your contractions are very close now, she said gently. It's almost time to push. We should focus on the delivery. Margaret nodded and closed her briefcase. I'll handle everything from here, she told Maya. You focus on bringing your daughter into the world. By the time you're holding her, Joy will have received her termination notice, and the foreclosure paperwork will be filed with the court. Eleanor sank into the chair by the door, her face buried in her hands. The proud, cruel woman who had swept into the room an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood that actions had consequences. Maya felt another powerful contraction, and Grace immediately moved into position. It's time, the nurse said with a warm smile. Let's meet your daughter. As Maya prepared to push, she felt no triumph over Eleanor's tears or satisfaction at Jessica's impending termination. She felt only a fierce determination to bring her child safely into the world and to build a life where character mattered more than convenience. What will happen when Maya's daughter is finally born, and Michael realizes everything he's lost? Maya's daughter entered the world at 4:47 in the morning with a cry that pierced through the delivery room. Her tiny fists waved at the injustice of being pulled from warmth into the bright lights and cold air of reality. Grace placed the baby on Maya's chest with tears streaming down her own face. She had witnessed not just a birth, but a woman's complete transformation from abandoned wife to something far more powerful over the past 6 hours. Eleanor had been escorted to the waiting room by security after her breakdown. Her protests about family rights had fallen on unsympathetic ears when the nurses heard exactly what kind of family she represented. She's perfect, Maya whispered against her daughter's dark hair, breathing in that indescribable newborn scent. Her body trembled from exhaustion and adrenaline and the overwhelming love that flooded through her. Lily Grace. Your name is Lily Grace and you are everything. Margaret arrived as the morning shift nurses completed their assessments. She stood beside Maya's bed while Lily nursed for the first time, her tiny mouth working instinctively at life's first lesson. Joy Williams received her termination notice at 5:30 this morning, Margaret reported quietly. She called Michael immediately, and he's been trying to reach hospital administration ever since to contest her firing. He still doesn't understand what's happening. Maya adjusted Lily's position so the baby could nurse more comfortably. He wasn't concerned about his daughter, she said softly. Only about his mistress. That's all I need to know. Grace finished checking Maya's vital signs and smiled warmly. You're doing beautifully. Both of you are healthy and strong. You should rest now while the baby sleeps. But before Maya could close her eyes, the door burst open again. Eleanor pushed past a nurse who tried to stop her, her face flushed with a different kind of fury now, the desperate anger of someone whose world was crumbling. You little witch, Eleanor spat, her expensive clothes from the night before replaced with different designer wear. She had gone home to change before returning. Joy just called Michael in hysterics because she's been fired. What did you do? Did you complain to hospital administration because you couldn't keep your own husband satisfied? Grace moved to intervene, but Maya raised her hand in a gesture that stopped the nurse. A gesture that now carried the weight of billions behind it. Margaret, Maya said calmly, never taking her eyes off Eleanor while Lily nursed peacefully. Would you please explain to Mrs. Daniel who owns this hospital? Margaret stepped forward with documents still in her hand. As of 6 o'clock this morning, St. Catherine's Medical Center is wholly owned by Adeyemi Holdings, a private medical investment company worth approximately 12 billion naira across 17 facilities in Nigeria. The principal owner and CEO is Maya Adeyemi Daniel, heir to the Adeyemi Technologies fortune established by her grandfather David Adeyemi, who passed away 18 months ago, leaving her an estate valued at 37 billion naira in liquid assets alone. The color drained from Eleanor's face so rapidly that Grace instinctively stepped closer, worried the woman might faint. Eleanor gripped the door frame, her legs seeming to lose their strength beneath her. That's impossible, Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible. Maya is a teacher. She drives a Honda. She uses market coupons. She's nobody. She was testing your son, Margaret said, her courtroom voice cutting through Eleanor's disbelief. Testing whether he would remain faithful when he believed she had nothing. He failed that test spectacularly, as did you when you mocked her for being worthless while she was in labor with your granddaughter. Maya watched emotions cascade across Eleanor's face. Disbelief shifted to comprehension. Comprehension transformed into horror. Horror crystallized into the desperate panic of someone who had just realized they had destroyed a bridge they desperately needed. Maya, Eleanor began, her voice cracking. I didn't know. If I had known who you really were, I never would have said those things. Please, you have to understand. You wouldn't have said them to someone rich, Maya finished quietly, her voice soft but sharp. But you had no problem saying them to someone you thought was poor. The problem isn't that you insulted someone with money, Eleanor. The problem is that you said those things at all, to anyone regardless of their bank account. Will Maya show mercy to Eleanor, or will justice take its full course? Michael arrived at noon, his clothes rumpled from a sleepless night spent between Jessica's frantic phone calls and his own growing confusion. He looked like a man who had aged years in a single night, his face drawn with exhaustion and anxiety. The security guard at the maternity ward entrance checked his identification with unusual thoroughness. He made a phone call that lasted 3 full minutes while Michael shifted nervously from foot to foot, his body language showing he sensed something was very wrong. You can go in, the guard finally said, his tone carefully neutral. Room 412. But Mrs. Daniel has requested that your visit be supervised and limited to 15 minutes. The words felt strange to Michael. His wife was setting terms on his access to his own child. He walked down the corridor where Maya had stood alone the previous night, his footsteps echoing against the polished floors. Maya sat propped against pillows in the private room, her dark hair brushed back, wearing clothes Michael had never seen before. Expensive fabrics that his wife shouldn't have been able to afford on a teacher's salary. Lily slept in the clear bassinet beside the bed, tiny and perfect. Margaret stood near the window with another lawyer Michael didn't recognize. Both held tablets and wore the expressions of attorneys who knew they held winning hands. Maya, Michael began, moving toward the bed with his hands extended. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was scared and Joy was telling me things that made me doubt everything. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling and... Stop, Maya said quietly. The single word carried enough weight that Michael's forward motion halted as if he had hit an invisible wall. You're not sorry you hurt me, Michael. You're sorry you made a mistake. There's a difference. What are you talking about? Michael's voice rose with frustration. Of course I'm sorry I hurt you. I want to make this right. I want to meet our daughter properly and be a family. Your mother's estate is being foreclosed on, Maya interrupted, her tone conversational despite the bomb she had just dropped. Adeyemi Financial Services holds her mortgage. 2.3 million naira against a property worth substantially less. She has 30 days to pay in full or lose everything. Michael stared at his wife as if she had begun speaking a foreign language. His brain struggled to process information that contradicted everything he thought he knew. How do you know about my mother's mortgage? He asked, confused. And you can't get Joy fired just because you're angry. That's not how hospitals work. They have procedures that the owner can modify, Margaret interjected smoothly, stepping forward. Perhaps I should introduce myself. Margaret Okonkwo, senior attorney for Adeyemi Holdings. My client, Maya Adeyemi Daniel, owns this hospital as of yesterday morning, along with 16 other medical facilities and approximately 12 billion naira in additional assets. Michael's legs seemed to collapse beneath him. He reached for the chair beside Maya's bed and sank into it, his face going pale. Pieces were clicking into place. Maya's mysterious family she never discussed, the expensive ring she wore, the way she never seemed genuinely worried about money. My grandfather was David Adeyemi, Maya said, watching her husband's face. Adeyemi Technologies, Adeyemi Medical Software, Adeyemi Financial Services. He died 18 months ago and left me everything. But I didn't tell you because I wanted to know if you would stay faithful when you thought we had nothing. Michael's hands shook as he gripped the chair. You tested me? The question emerged strangled. You had billions and you made us live in that apartment and drive that car just to test me? I made us live like normal people, Maya corrected, her voice hardening. I wanted a partnership built on love instead of money. And you failed, Michael. The moment Joy whispered that you deserved better, you threw away 5 years of marriage without even trying to fight for it. Michael instinctively reached toward Lily, but stopped when Maya's expression froze him. You abandoned her before she was born, Maya said, adjusting the baby's blanket. You told hospital staff I wasn't worth the expense. You held another woman while I stood in labor. Your mother laughed at my pain. And now you want to be a family? Margaret stepped forward with official documents. These are divorce papers with a custody arrangement. Supervised visitation every other weekend once Lily is 6 months old. You'll pay child support based on your actual income, not Maya's. You'll have no claim to any of her assets because you signed a prenuptial agreement on your wedding day that you didn't read carefully. Michael's mind reeled back 5 years to the courthouse ceremony, the document someone had handed him with assurances it was standard paperwork. His hasty signature because Maya had been waiting and he had been young and certain that love was enough. The prenup, he whispered. I signed away everything before I even knew there was anything to sign away. My grandfather insisted, Maya said, picking up Lily as the baby began to fuss. He said anyone who truly loved me would sign without hesitation. You proved him right, Michael. You signed because you thought I had nothing worth protecting. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her face bearing none of yesterday's cruelty but wearing desperate pleading instead. Maya, please, she began. But Maya raised her hand. Your foreclosure stands, she said simply, her attention on Lily rather than Eleanor. You taught your son that people are disposable, that cruelty is acceptable. I'm teaching my daughter something different. That lesson starts with consequences for people who hurt others. The security guard appeared in the doorway. Sir, ma'am, your 15 minutes are complete. I need to ask you to leave. Michael stood on shaking legs, the divorce papers in his hand. He walked toward the door, Eleanor following behind with her designer clothes and her ruined life. At the threshold, Michael turned back one final time. But Maya had already turned away, whispering promises to Lily about the life they would build together. A life where character would always matter more than convenience. The door closed with a soft click. Maya held her daughter closer, feeling no guilt for delivering consequences Michael and Eleanor had earned through every choice they made, every betrayal they committed, every moment they had seen her as worthless when she had actually been priceless all along. 3 years later, Maya stood in her office at Adeyemi Holdings headquarters in Victoria Island, watching her daughter play with blocks on the floor. Lily was building towers with focused determination, her tongue poking out in concentration. Margaret entered with quarterly reports showing remarkable improvements across all 17 medical facilities. Patient satisfaction was up 47%, employee retention up 63%. The Grace Daniel Nursing Scholarship had funded 127 students from low-income backgrounds. Michael is requesting another modification to custody, Margaret mentioned. He wants overnight visits now that Lily is 3. Maya watched her daughter carefully balance another block. Michael had been consistent with supervised visits, that was true. But reports showed he still asked inappropriate questions about Mama's money. Deny the modification, Maya said finally. When Lily is old enough to express her own preferences around age 7 or 8, we'll revisit it. Margaret nodded approvingly. And Eleanor is still calling monthly, requesting contact. Still no, Maya said, though the answer came with more complexity now. Eleanor was living in a rental apartment on her pension and whatever Michael gave her. But she had made her choices. Margaret paused at the door. Michael is getting married next month. To someone named Amanda from his office. The investigator's report suggests genuine affection. Maya absorbed the news with surprising calm. She felt no jealousy, only distant hope that perhaps Michael had learned something from losing everything. After Margaret left, Lily climbed into Maya's lap. Tell me about great-grandpa David, she requested as she often did. Maya smiled and began the familiar story about a man who built an empire but measured success by the people he helped rather than the money he accumulated. About a grandfather who had insisted on the prenuptial agreement not to protect his money, but to protect his granddaughter's heart. Lily listened with rapt attention and Maya felt grateful, not for the billions she had inherited but for the wisdom that came with them. For the test that had revealed Michael's true nature before she wasted more years on someone incapable of genuine partnership. The sun painted the office in amber and gold. Maya held her daughter closer, thinking about Eleanor in her small apartment, about Michael planning his second wedding, about Joy somewhere trying to rebuild her life. She felt no triumph in their struggles but no guilt either. Just the quiet satisfaction of someone who had survived betrayal, claimed her power, and chosen to wield it with justice rather than vengeance. Mama, Lily said sleepily. Are you a princess? Maya laughed softly, kissing her daughter's head. No, sweetheart. I'm just a woman who learned that you can't test love without risking that it will fail. I'm someone who discovered that people who hurt us teach us what we deserve by showing us what we don't. And I'm your mama, which is the most important thing I'll ever be. Outside the windows, Lagos continued its eternal rhythm. Maya held her daughter and felt nothing but peace, the kind that came from knowing she had been tested by fire and emerged not as ash, but as something stronger, refined, and finally completely free. We've come to the end of today's story. I hope it touched your heart. Thanks for watching and staying with us till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?